Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome all to Al-Nasiha. Al-Nasiha is a form in which we develop political consciousness and we deal with issues that pertain to society as a whole. And we arrive at some sort of conclusion to the benefit of the public good. Here we have a snippet of a video that was made by DH Daniel Hakikaju. The snippet here clips some language that he develops, and we wanted to talk about that language and we wanted to talk about who it is that he's appealing to. So we've entitled this session, The Case of DH in Political Thought, His Open Appeal to the Right Wing. And we're saying that it slides into an implicit support for their racial stance. How is it that we make that case? Firstly, America First, although his usage of it may not be that, but America First has historical tie-ins to white extremist nationalist thought, and that's historically documented. We're not going to get into that. A number of people have talked about that. I prefer to replace it with the statement that was made by Isa Galloway, Americans first. Americans first. But the idea of America first, it has historical roots that go back to white right-wing nationalism. But he says that it has lost all moral legitimacy. But say for the sake of argument, we were to talk about the idea that the political stance of America first is about putting the country first and focusing on its internal issues and needs and retreating from being the policeman of the world, so to speak. Say that we were to take it from that direction, and the question comes in, does it have moral legitimacy? Did it have moral legitimacy? Was it ever the case that that was the focus, focused political stance? It is not the case. The ideological background of America First is deeply tied into superiority or US exceptionalism. Right? So here, one of the things that he states, he says, why should anyone care about white replacement? And that's a very explicit appeal to the base that he's trying to speak to. Right. And so the idea of white replacement, uh, it is the idea that non-white immigrants and their descendants through immigration and differential birth rates will replace whites. It is the idea that the Black and the Latino community will continue to grow in addition to other immigrants that come from various places in this world. Not to say that the Black and the Latino community are necessarily immigrants, but without getting into the details of that, that these groups of people will replace whites, right? And the idea of white replacement, some say, is deeply tied to uh, the white genocide claim, and that is that there's a systematic, deliberate, intentional, calculated move to dilute whiteness, to destroy whiteness, right? And so both of these concepts are coming from the far right, and in some cases in recent times have been caused to violence in this country. Now, ironically, The statement here that's made is you appeal to racial sympathy but support bombing and killing everyone else. How are you any different from Jews? So he's speaking directly to the white right wing base. And it's noted that the white replacement theory and the white genocide narrative is also tied into anti-Semitism. So as Muslims, we don't have a generalization of the Jewish people as being problematic. We have a criticism of certain characteristics specifically that are embodied by right-wing Zionism. With regard to what is in the Quran, it can be applied to any group of people. It just happens to be that the Quran talks about the followers of Moses, and the Quran also talks about idol worshippers. The Quran also talks about lukewarm or backsliding Muslims. The Quran openly talks about hypocrites. The Quran talks about the people of the book. The Quran talks about a number of people. So this type of discourse coming from a person that's claiming to be a Muslim thinker feeds into the right-wing Zionist narrative that Muslims are a threat to the stability of the US, are the enemy within. And in recent times, Tucker has come out to counter that type of narrative, which we're seeing come from people like Laura Loomer and a number of others. It's not a new phenomenon, but it is very clear here that DH is openly speaking to the right wing, white nationalists, uh, Nazi like base, and even taking on their language, right? And so, although it may be a Dawa strategy, don't know his intentions. It may be a Dawa strategy, and we see this coming from those that are moving in European circles, that they have a way of speaking to these people. But ethically, it puts us in a dilemma situation. Firstly, this type of rhetoric is a rhetoric which is problematic in terms of how it is that it doesn't call out the problematic thinking that it is very clearly problematic, the problematic thinking that is within the white right extremist nationalist circles. It also is supporting, the anti-Semitic rhetoric, which in this time period in which we're trying to deal with the Palestinian crisis, it's not very beneficial for us as Muslims to be entertaining that type of thing. And because groups are judged as groups and there is the idea of collective punishment, this type of rhetoric contributes to Muslims further being stereotyped and alienated and marginalized and considered the terrorist other, the anti-Semitic group, and it takes away from being able to really deal with the situations at hand. And the situations at hand are really addressing the problem of racism, addressing where it is that Zionism has gone in the case of the Palestinians, and how it is that race plays a very problematic part in in inequitable, in unequal, in maltreatment, in discriminatory practices in this country, right? So we want to end on the note that in this post, we clearly are seeing that DH is playing with fire. DH is playing with fire. He's speaking to a group that he's not going to be able to really deal with. And if he has internalized that rhetoric himself, then it's extremely problematic due to its nature, due to its nature, right? And, we say that Muslims should be cautious in how it is that they adopt ideas. They have to know how to filter them. They have to know how to be critical with them. They have to know that a lot of these discourses that are out there are not always discourses that are rooted in a school of thought, which is healthy for society. And in this case, being a thought leader, this is a type of discourse which goes on to influence other Muslims and is done so, the transference is done so in an uncritical way. And so then now what we're doing is inducting a certain segment of the Muslim youth and others into a racialized discourse, which is the cause of many problems in this country, right? And this is something that we were trying to work through in these past decades. We were trying to dismantle this type of thinking for the well-being of the society. And even in mainstream European American society, this type of discourse is considered to be problematic. And that's why it's put under the classification of being conspiracy thought, right? But if you want to address the issue itself, because this group claims to be Christian, then the question really is, how does this thinking represent Christian values? How is it representative of law and order in the contractual sense? Because in the case of Maduro, whether people liked him or not, is not of importance at the moment. He was a legitimate legal leader of a country, a sovereign country. So we're talking about flagrant disregard for international law. We're talking about flagrant disregard for legitimate processes in this country, such as Congress having to deal with approving war, right? And so there's stances that are being taken that are deeply worrisome in that they contribute to the instability of the country. And there's no doubt that the idea of the great white replacement is something that is very concerning for the right wing, the white right wing. And it has been cause to fear, and that fear has been the motivation of violence in this country. It's something that we have to take serious. It's very irresponsible on the part of Daniel to push that line of thought. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.